Welcome, everyone, to the live session produced by Revealing Genius. This is a facilitated executive roundtable with a live audience. And today we are broadcasting simultaneously on YouTube and LinkedIn. So, welcome, everyone. Our topic today is starting a nonprofit, considerations and insights as an extension of your personal brand. And I'm super excited to announce the speakers. They are backstage right now. And what I'll do is I'll be introducing them one at a time. I'll introduce them in alpha order. And then we're going to dive right into the facilitated panel discussion. Keep in mind, we will carve out some time toward the end. So please go ahead and drop any questions that you might have for these amazing ladies in the chat. And then we'll wrap up the session today with one piece of game-changing advice from each of our panelists. So let's go ahead and meet them. First up is Susan Jacobs, founding CEO from Wheels of Success. Her journey was inspired by a personal event, and it highlighted the life-changing impact of reliable transportation. She founded Wheels of Success, her nonprofit, in 2003, and she is dedicated to helping families achieve stability. And this is a quote from her: "Each set of keys is a lifeline." And my gosh, over 1,200 cars have been exchanged so far. Welcome, Susan.
Well, thank you so much. It's exciting to be here and to share so many questions that people have about starting a nonprofit. So this was a great idea.
Can't wait to hear your story and the details behind it. So thanks for being here. Next up, we have Martha Mayhood Mertz. She is the founder of Athena International, and she was inspired by, quote unquote, a reverse role model. Interesting. She founded Athena International in 1982, and she founded it to develop, support, and honor women leaders to reach their full potential and to nurture balance in the voices of leadership worldwide. She is the author of 2 books, Becoming Athena and Living Athena. And most importantly, she's the architect of the ALM, the Athena Leadership Model. And with that model, she has literally changed the definition of leadership through her research on the way women lead. And get this, it has grown her nonprofit to 8,000 Athena Award recipients in 500 regions in 48 states and 11 countries. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you, Mary. It's delightful to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation and to spending this time with these honorable people.
Welcome, welcome. What a powerhouse group. And finally, we have Christy Vogel, the executive director and founder of Sounding Joy, Hearing and Giving. This is newly formed, very, very new. And she focuses on providing hearing aids for children that their families can't afford. And her story is very personal, and you can actually hear it on TED Talk. She shared her story of resilience and her story about the life-saving impact of hearing on the TEDx stage in 2023. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and catch it. It's a good one. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you so much, Mary. I'm honored and excited to be here. And I have a feeling I've got a lot to learn from Susan and Martha. So I'm here to learn too.
Wonderful. It's as I mentioned, it is a fierce team here today, and we're excited to share some answers to some frequently asked questions. So shall we dive in?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. First question is, we're gonna go right for it. You know, we're just gonna go for it. Was there a moment or experience that made you say, I have to do this, that moved you from idea, thinking about it, to action, like actually doing it? Why don't we start with Susan? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Two pieces to that. I was actually running a staffing agency, and that was the question I got all the time. How am I going to take that job? I can't get there. There is no bus that's going to take me there. My car won't make it. We're a multi-county area, and we work tri-county and over bridges. So people, I heard that all the time, constantly. And it got to me like, oh my God, how am I going to do my job? And I started researching, and there were lots of programs for training and for other basic necessities about work, but nothing once you got the job, how you were going to get there. So that was the aha moment. And then, you know, how things happen, God kind of has his funny way. The company I was working for changed their platform and weren't able to hold on because 9/11 happened, and they were going from hospitality to manufacturing, but there was no hospitality business to support them while they were doing that because 9/11 had happened. So they ended up closing, and I thought, well, somebody's telling me I need to be doing this, because I had been researching why there weren't any programs, and there were, but in other parts of the country. And so I just said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do this. And I'm entrepreneurial by nature. And I just said, going to figure out a way. I mean, I find other people jobs. I found myself a job to support myself while I was starting Wheels.
Amazing. Yeah, Susan Jacobs, Wheels of Success. I attended your gala, had the honor of attending your gala, and it was very moving to see the recipients. They were so happy to receive the keys to a car that was going to change their lives, literally. Yeah, really exciting.
Life-changing. It is.
Yeah, life-changing. And those were the words they used, literally life-changing. You changed the game for them. Wonderful. Thank you. Martha from Athena International. What you have a great story. I know this story about, you know, when you said, I just have to do this.
Yes, amazing story it was. And many, many years ago, let me just give you a thumbnail sketch. I was asked to become a member of a board of a Chamber of Commerce in the middle of our country. And once I got there, I saw that I was the only woman on the board. And so I tried to change that. I nominated two very prominent women from our community. I tried to change that. My colleague on the board came to me privately and said, Martha, women aren't leaders. We're not going to take these women on our board. So I was the only one and decided I had to change that. That was my moment of being catalyzed to move forward. And it gave me a vision for what needed to be done. I knew that these people didn't see women as leaders, but frankly, women didn't see themselves as leaders either, as I was to discover. So we proceeded to do some planning and work, and what we did put together at that time became Athena International. And the odd thing about my work was that I was already a member of a nonprofit organization, and from within that, I started an effort that ultimately became another nonprofit. So it was kind of a nestled circumstance, but a long, fabulous, interesting story.
Yes, love it. Wonderful. And it's amazing how it started in a small chamber in a small town in Michigan, and it's grown. I mean, tell us. I mean, did you expect it to grow that large?
I had no clue. My focus and purpose in starting to do the work I was doing was to change the concept about women as leaders within that boardroom, within the boardroom. And it just kept growing and growing. So that it was an idea that was timely. It resonated whenever somebody was told about this idea, they thought it would be good for their community as well. That's what happened.
Wonderful. It sounds like it's grown beyond your wildest dreams, Martha.
Beyond.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christy Vogel from Sounding Joy Hearing and Giving. What was your moment or experience that made you say, today's the day I've got to do this?
Well, you know, growing up hearing impaired, not getting my hearing aids until I was about 27 years old because they're so expensive. I'd always had it in my heart that one day I would start something like this and help people get hearing aids. But what really changed my thought to one day to today is the day that I have to do this, is that I learned doing research in starting a nonprofit. I learned some really startling statistics about children who are hearing impaired and not getting their hearing aids. It wasn't just a case of let's help the kids hear better and they'll do better in school, they'll hear their friends when they're playing, they'll do better in sports. The statistics that I learned about was that children who don't get their hearing aids are more than twice as likely to become addicted to drugs and alcohol. And secondly, children who don't get those hearing aids who are hearing impaired are more than 5 times as likely to attempt suicide. So it was that day that I realized that I can't wait until retirement. I can't wait until I run a marketing agency, and I can't wait until I sell the agency to be able to have the time to do this. Children are dying. So that was my day that I looked up and said, I don't have the time, I don't have the resource, I don't have the money, but we're going to do this and we have to do this. And then I related it back to, I realized looking back that I have 2 cousins also hearing impaired who didn't get their hearing aids either. And they both died from their addictions. So all of that layering up on top of each other told me there is not another day to waste. And that's when we got started.
Yeah, not another day. What are we waiting for? That's great. That's a great takeaway. That's our soundbite for today. Not another day. What are we waiting for? Love it. Thank you, Christy from Sounding Joy. Next question. At Revealing Genius, we talk about our why and the why that fuels our personal brand to do, be, have, see, what we were born to do. Curious, ladies, how has your why evolved over time? And how do you keep it front and center when things get tough in your nonprofit? Susan, would you like to kick us off again?
Oh, okay. Well, my why is, I guess since I was little, has always been to help people. I guess that's always been my affinity. My mom used to say, you don't bring home stray animals, you bring home stray people. And so I don't know. So my degree's in social work, and that's how I started. But I realized I was also entrepreneurial. And so I kind of pushed that towards starting the nonprofit. I felt I was like a business. If I could get it up and running and successful within 5 years, that it could be successful. So I kind of modeled it that way. So when I'm looking at things that are challenging, and we have those days, I just have to look at, this is just today. This is where you were, this is where you'd like to be. And there's always going to be challenges. And you just have to figure out a way that realize it's a challenge. It's not permanent. Those things can change. And especially in the transportation and car business, right now, especially with what's going on politically, is an example of how you have to just go with the flow and figure out alternatives to how you're going to do things to continue. So to give an example, during the first recession in 2008, because we started in 2003, we were going through, lack of car donations because people used to keep their cars 2 to 4 years, and it went to 7 years. And what we did was we started doing more major repairs that we used to turn away and not accept. And we said, okay, if we can make somebody's car run, they don't need to take one of our cars. So just trying to think outside the box, I think, when you have that challenge can actually, and now even when donations went back up, we still kept that program. So now we're doing both and doing a higher percentage of people that we're able to help. So, and waiting to see what happens now, if that happens again. So
yes, great mention about the recession too, and the challenge, overcoming those challenges. And to your left shoulder there, we see that you certainly have overcome some obstacles. So you're 20 years and still growing. Yes, over 20 years. Wheels of Success.
Yeah, over 20 years. We're in our 21st year, and we're growing now. We're looking at doing more in terms of expanding our social enterprise. So we actually have our Wheels program and we have our social enterprise, and now we're looking at doing another social enterprise so that we're not so dependent on grants to fund us, and that we can fund ourselves. And also a necessity, the social enterprise as well. So again, from my entrepreneurial spirit, that's coming forth, but hopefully it will also help the nonprofit to help more people.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susan. Martha, tell us, how has your why evolved and how do you keep it front and center, come what may?
Well, remembering that the organization that I started really wasn't an organization at the time, it was an idea. But it started in 1982. So I've gone through decades of a potential for change. We started out to try to lift women in our community to be seen as leaders. So they'd be considered for leadership positions, they'd be appointed to things that mattered to them and to the community. They would be hired for jobs that were women in leadership. That's what we started to do. And then along the way, I started hearing, I would go to Athena leadership events, and they were big deals in communities. And I would hear a woman who's being honored by this extraordinary award say, I don't see myself as a leader. And that was strange to hear the first time. But when I heard it the fourth time, I decided that these women were saying something else. So we studied leadership. How do women lead? And we worked with the Center for Creative Leadership. We found, after a fair amount of research, that there are 8 core principles or strengths that women bring to leadership. We call them the Athena leadership model. And whenever things get tough for me in terms of leadership or running my company or anything else that's happening, I return to those core principles for the kinds of strength that I know I have.
Brilliant.
And we all have.
And we all have. Yes. Thank you for saying that. And to your right, there is a picture of your second book, Living Athena. And we can find the 8 principles, the ALM model in that book. Yes?
Yes, ma'am, you can. And it would be
Wonderful.
worth looking at them.
Yes, absolutely. I keep them actually front and center. I have them on my wall.
That's nice.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Martha, from Athena International. Christy, sounding joy. How has your why evolved over time? You and I have talked about this quite often. And how do you keep it front and center? Because you've been through some stuff, my friend.
Well, Mary, you helped me articulate beautifully what my why is. I've always known what my why was, and basically to make people happy or to bring joy in their lives. But through your wonderful Revealing Genius webinar, that workshop that I took part in, I was able to articulate my why is to ignite joy. And that phrase was created right as I was creating Sounding Joy, and Sounding Joy didn't even have a name yet. So my why and being able to articulate that with Mary allowed us to come back. So the marketing agency that I run, my team took it upon themselves to take on Sounding Joy before it was called Sounding Joy as a pro bono client. So they came to me with some recommendations of names, and they purposely incorporated the word joy in a couple of the options. And of course, as soon as I saw Sounding Joy, it was during COVID, so we were all on a Teams meeting. And as soon as they unveiled it, I said nothing, and I just started crying. And my VP at the time says, I think we have a winner. They went ahead and showed me 2 other ones, but they kind of knew that Sounding Joy would be that winning name for sure. And it absolutely was, and it still is. And so unfortunately, just like the rest of us, we do have those hurdles and we do have those tough days. And it's really easy to lose sight of what is it that I'm doing. And at the end of the day, are we making a difference? Because there's so many hurdles. And as soon as you jump over one, then 3 more get put out there. So Some of the things that I do is obviously you think about the end game and you think about the children's lives that you are helping. And we've gotten really good at asking for testimonials from not only the kiddos that we help, but also from the parents, from the teachers that are working with these children. And they tell us often about the life-changing experiences that they have. So I do take a few moments to, set aside a few moments just to read those testimonials. We have wonderful videos of some of our kiddos talking about what a life-changing experience that has been. So that's a highlight for sure. And then for those weeks when I forget to set aside that time, or I say I don't have time to set aside that time, weekly with our social media posts, we have a recurring video of hearts dropping from the ceiling every time a child is approved for new hearing aids. And we're on a cadence now of about one child a week getting approved. So I look forward to seeing that and then the comments that go along with it. And it really brings me back to this is what we are doing. Yes, we've got hurdles, but guess what? We're going to get through those hurdles and we're going to keep saving lives. And so that's a good reminder of what it is that we're actually doing.
Amazing. Thank you for that story. And it is it's a real testimony to how you've incorporated your personal brand into your nonprofit. Like it is an extension of you, really, Christy, would you say?
Absolutely, which is why it's such a big passion. I think that's true for all three of us on this panel today. And I think it's actually true for, especially being new to the nonprofit arena, I think it's true for anyone who starts a nonprofit because there's not a lot of glory in it, let me tell you. But if you don't go into it with that passion and it is not an extension of your why, you're going to run out of energy really quick. And so, with Susan and Martha having done it for 20 plus years, even longer, the passion fuels them and refuels them every day. And if you try this without the passion, good luck. I don't know where you're going to get the energy to do it.
Yeah, I love that point of view. So what I'm hearing you say is your why is your rocket fuel, basically, to keep you going. Yeah, against all
Exactly.
odds.
Once
Yeah.
again, you have termed it in a much better way than I could.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a great dialogue. If you're joining us right now, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see Camelia Downey is here from Europe. So we have quite a few people that are on the call from all over the globe. If you're joining us, you'll meet Susan Jacobs from Wheels of Success, Martha Mertz from Athena International, and Christy from Sounding Joy, Hearing and Giving. Let's go on to our third question. What's a common misconception that people have about starting the nonprofit, and what's the truth? So let's see. Why don't we go back around the horn here? How about Martha? Kick us off on that question.
Oh, that's a very good question. And I think it's important for anyone who's thinking about starting a nonprofit to think about what will go into this. Let me tell you, we all know that personal passion is going to be the driver, as Christy was saying. It's what needs to stay there and be lodged into your psyche for a long time. My why is encouraging accomplished women leaders to realize the strengths they carry within themselves. That's been what has carried me all this time. And so I think it's important for people to recognize their passion and think about the vision that they have for an ultimate vision. What is the impact of the work that I'm going to be doing here, and who will it affect, and why is it important? So I think all of those are critical. It's also probably pretty important not to be drowned or overwhelmed by the idea that this is going to be impossible. Don't let go of your dream or your vision. Recognize that when you start a nonprofit, it really is a full enterprise. It is like starting a business, and that's fine. A lot of us have done that. But for me, it took kind of like an executive team to begin with. I gathered people around me who cared about the idea and had good ideas, and we collaborated for months and years about what was our message, what would it take, what was our strategy, how could we sustain this, and things kept changing and growing and being different, and that's okay. We adjusted. It was important to recognize that there are phases along the way. You don't start with the big, heavy responsibility of doing everything at the beginning. Take your time, gather wise counsel around you, and think about the short-term phases first. Because if you think that you're going to have to do it all to begin with, you won't probably take the first step.
Yeah, collaboration was the key in fostering that growth. So thank you, Martha. Christy, how about you? What's a common misconception people have about starting a nonprofit, and what's your truth?
Well, yeah, my big miss was when I started this just a couple of years ago was, how am I going to raise funds? How am I going to get money in? Because we want to buy hearing aids, and that takes a lot of money to do that. Boy, was I wrong thinking that that was going to be my biggest hurdle. Don't get me wrong, fundraising is a job, and we work very hard to do that. But what I quickly found was, I figured you got the money, you can buy the hearing aids, you get them in the kids' ears. Well, it's not that easy. This is a medical procedure, so you need sign-offs, you need ENTs involved, you need providers involved, and you also need engaged parents as well to get the child to the appointments, to sign off, to create or to fill out the financial needs application. And you would think, once again, if you put up a sign saying free hearing aids today, you'd have a line around the block. That just was not the case. It's just like in regular business. If you have a wonderful product or service, it doesn't mean that people are going to seek you out. You have to put it out there. You have to make it easy for them to know and understand it. And so one of our biggest hurdles all along has been that the parent engagement, number one, and then also getting the providers to surround us. We're paying for the hearing aids, here you go, but we are not ENTs and we're not audiologists. So that has become our largest hurdle. We're still, fundraising, we'll still take donations all day long, but we've got money to spend on hearing aids. So we need access to the kiddos in order to spend that money. And that's through more providers, more ENTs, more audiologists, as well as more parent engagement. And that parent engagement also comes through parent education. Because I know in my case, when my parents were told so many years ago that I needed hearing aids when I was about 11 years old, they pretty much just said, well, she's just hard-headed. So she's, she can hear fine. She's doing okay in school. She shows up for dinner on time. But the reality is none of us knew, including myself, how little I was hearing, because there wasn't the sudden drop off of hearing one day. All of a sudden, Christy can't hear. I was born hearing impaired. And then it didn't suddenly go away, but it slowly dissipated the older that I got. And so when I was finally at 11 years old, when they're telling my parents that this was the case and that I needed hearing aids, it was really easy for them to say, no, I think she's fine. I think you might be overreacting. So education is another big hurdle of a component that I did not expect to have. I figured you bring in the cash, you're going to be fine. You're going to get hearing aids in ears. And that's absolutely not the case.
It's great perspective. And I love the lens of perspective because Christy's started her nonprofit within the past 5 years. And Susan is 20 years in the making. And Martha started her nonprofit in 1982. So there's very different lenses here today. Really interesting. Thank you for that. Susan, I know you are a veteran in this area. What is a common misconception that people have about starting a nonprofit? And what's your truth?
Well, just from people who call me all the time wanting to do this in other places, I find that they don't realize the logistics of what's involved. This is very labor intensive, what we do, because yes, we have the piece of fundraising, like you said, Christy, you're always having to do that, but we have to find the repair facilities, like you have to find the ENTs to fix the cars and know that they're doing the job we want, not the car industry, because when we fix a car, we look at it differently than the average mechanic. We're looking at it long term, not, oh, you need brakes, we're going to fix your brakes. No, we're looking at the big picture, because if we fix your brakes today and next month you need something else, it's just going to be perpetual, and you're either not going to be able to afford it or your car's not going to run. So we had to look at that piece. And we actually had the other problem, though, in terms of getting people. We have too many people. We don't even advertise. We do not have our brochures anywhere. When people ask us to go to fairs, we decline, because we could not possibly help everybody that needs assistance. That's all we would be doing, is taking phone calls and reading applications. So it's a little overwhelming to try to determine how are you going to make your selections of who you're going to help, because everybody who comes to us needs the car. But what is going to be the outcome of getting that car? What will it change for you besides being able to still go to work? So what we realized was what was important was not just the tangibles of being able to still go to work, but could you go back to school to better what your work was? Could you get a promotion? Could you get a raise? But as we started doing exit surveys, what our folks told us was what was most important to them were what we called the intangibles, not the tangibles. They could be part of the community again. Kids could participate in school activities. So we had to look at things differently. So getting back to what you're saying, I think a lot of people who want to start a nonprofit just look at that one piece without the bigger perception of what it might be. And I think the other thing is there are a lot of nonprofits started that are duplications and are really unnecessary. Had people done the research and not said, well, I want to do this, but who can I join forces with to do this better? Instead of us each having to have all these administrative costs that we could do away with if we were joining. And we're trying to do that more in partnering with agencies. So we can be that last piece of the puzzle for them to get their outcomes to be better. So we work with, domestic violence shelters. We work with veterans groups. We're working with Feeding Tampa Bay, who now has a huge workforce program that they're starting. Again, you don't have to, excuse my pun, reinvent the wheel. You have to figure out better ways for the wheel to go round so that people can get the help they need without it being duplicated effort. And I think that's what a lot of people who have the passion want to start something, but they don't realize there's somebody else doing something similar. Why not join forces with them and do it better?
Yeah, it's another great soundbite, Susan. What I heard you say was, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's figure out how to make the existing wheel go around, possibly through partnerships and collaboration, strategic alliances. So it's a really great soundbite. I wanted to pause for just a moment and acknowledge our production engineer. Her name is Rebecca Munns. So you see on this Restream live studio, we have someone behind the scenes. Her name is Rebecca, and she's making it all work. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her. Thank you so much for all you do. Also, welcome to the audience. If you're just joining us now, we have Susan Jacobs from Wheels of Success, Martha Mertz from Athena International. We have Christy Vogel from Sounding Joy Hearing Aid Giving, and wanted to acknowledge the audience in terms of questions. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and drop them into the chat. We are going to be answering some questions. And Camelia, we see yours. We are going to get to that in just a minute. So welcome, 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 everyone. We're headed to our next question, which is this. If someone is passionate about a cause, but has no idea where to start, what's the first action step that you would recommend to them to gain traction? Susan, we'll go back around the horn.
I think I'm going to duplicate what I said. Do the research and see if there's anyone else doing what you want to do. and call them up and see how can you do something with them that maybe you don't need to start your own thing, or even if you do, it could be a offshoot of what they're doing because they always wanted to do that piece and they didn't do that. So I think that would be the first thing that
That's
you
great
should
advice.
do.
Thank you, Susan. Martha, how about you?
Keeping in mind that my venue was within a chamber of commerce, I did a little internal research. We had 1,200 members, and 45 of those were women. And so I called together all of those 45 women. Surprising, almost every one of them invited came to a meeting and we listened. One of the strengths of the Athena leadership model is learning constantly. And a part of that is the art, what I call the art of listening. So I think that was the time when we would be able to hear what did this organization offer to these women? What did they want? What did they want the organization to become because they were members? And those kinds of questions. And it really, that meeting kind of formed a coalescing of people that we knew were interested in what we were passionate about. And we started from there, but it was the value and the art, I'll call it, of listening. Find out what people think, what they're saying, what they feel, what they're feeling, what they would be willing to do about it. And then you can proceed on a path that will have some fuel behind it, as Mary would say.
Wonderful.
Jet fuel.
Yeah, jet fuel, the rocket fuel. Absolutely. So we have research from Susan. We have active listening from Martha. Christy, how about you? What's your advice?
So Susan hit the nail on the head for me as far as research. So when I started seeking out how to extend my passion out there, it was not to start a 501c3. So I did all the research that I could to see what was out there that was already serving this purpose. And I found a few different organizations that were kind of doing it, but then I kept asking questions from the people who were helping to receive these services, how those organizations were stacking up. And I, through that conversation, so I was interviewing audiologists from the school district, from both Pinellas County and Hillsborough County, our local counties here. And what happened was, not only did I realize that there was a need for me to start a 501c3 in order to do this, but secondly, these were the people that helped me to structure our organization in a way that would be more beneficial to our kiddos and their families. So I was learning from what the gaps were in this community that those organizations were not serving, and kind of learned from, I won't call them mistakes, but just a different way of organizing the services that they were providing. So what I didn't expect was that because I was talking to these individuals, the audiologists, the school audiologists, up front before I even started the 501c3, they were a part of this organization before it became an organization, because of the wonderful information that they were providing to me, the advice that they were providing to me. So what happened was, when I said, okay, I'm going to start this organization, they immediately wanted to be a part of it. And that today is why they have become very quickly our number one resource of referrals of kiddos. They are in it. They saw that what we were trying to do was going to help reduce their frustration, because can you imagine, as a school audiologist, to be telling parents day in and day out, your child needs a hearing aid, they're hearing impaired, they need a hearing aid, and the parents say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. It's $8,000. We can't afford it. Insurance isn't covering it. As a provider, as an audiologist working with children all day, that's got to be just awful to have to hear that all the time. So when I came to them with a possible way of what would it look like if we did this? Or what would it look like if we did that? They jumped right on board because they saw it as a way to be able to say yes to parents more often when they're saying, we can't do it. Because these audiologists, they talk about heart, they've got a huge heart. They go to school as long as most doctors do. They are doctors of audiology, and they get paid a quarter of the amount. So their hearts are in what it is that they do. So their hearts were in helping us to build a successful organization. And that only came through from me asking questions as to who else is doing this, so I don't have to start a 501c3. So there are benefits on both sides to just surrounding yourself with people who know and asking lots of questions and asking for help. And I think that's something else. In addition, we don't like asking people for donations. We do it anyway. We also don't like asking for help. And that would be a huge recommendation, is just ask for help. You would be amazed at the number of people who are passionate about what you are also passionate about, and they want to help.
Yeah, great advice, ladies. And from Susan, we heard research. From Martha, we heard listen, actively listen. And from Christy, we heard surround yourself with folks who you could possibly partner with and ask them for the help to fill the gaps that you might need to fill. All right. So, oh my gosh, we're coming up. We are 20 minutes at the top of the hour. I have one more question, then we're going to go to Camelia's questions. So the next question is, what are some nonprofits that inspired you, that you emulate? Why don't we start with Christy and we'll go back around?
Gosh, nonprofits that inspired me. So I think from being an entrepreneur prior to running a nonprofit or starting a nonprofit, what I looked to were organizations that were running in a very scalable way. So I didn't necessarily focus on the nonprofit sector. I decided, since I know a little bit more about starting a for-profit business, that I would create my nonprofit in the very same way. So I pretty much focused on businesses that were able to scale very quickly. We're a virtual organization. We always will be a virtual organization. So I focused on those types of organizations as well. And then, of course, once COVID hit, more organizations became virtual as well. So that was fun to learn from also. So I kind of took a different approach with that instead of taking a look at another nonprofit.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really great insight there, where you looked at virtual models because that was your intent. Thank you for that. Really interesting. Martha, how about you? What's a nonprofit that inspired you that you emulate?
Well, I've always admired organizations that cultivate leadership from the inside out, and you can see when that happens that they build their own leaders from within, and it's very inspiring. One of the places that I turned to long ago was the Center for Creative Leadership, which had a reputation for teaching people about leadership. They had a program, one program in their raft of programs that was for women as leaders. And I managed to get myself signed up for that, maybe as a scholarship student within. And I learned so much generally about leadership and so on. So I love that organization because they had recognized that women needed to be a component of what they were teaching for the whole country. Another one was an organization called Catalyst. You may have heard of it. They were devoted to research. That's all they did. And it was timely because companies were starting at that time to think about, oh my goodness, half the population we haven't paid attention to. A lot of those people are our customers. We want to attract them, but we haven't hired anyone. And so Catalyst helped a lot of major institutions and organizations to begin to understand why it was important to bring women in for their perspectives, for their unique understanding of maybe the products that were produced by that company. So I loved the work that they were doing because it was obviously going to be relevant to what we were doing. Um, and organizations that that honor the dignity of each individual, so that the women weren't hired and then set aside. They were hired and put to work and valued for what they could bring.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Martha. Susan, I'm dying to hear your answer to this question. What are some nonprofits that inspired you that you emulate?
Actually, the one probably that inspired me the most was Habitat for Humanity. It was real similar to how I looked at what we were going to do. They were dealing with homes, we were dealing with cars, both of which are huge components to having a stable life. And I could model because a lot of what they did by looking at them, we want people where they have sweat equity to build their home. We have a different type of equity because you can't build, fix your own car. So we do other things to do that so that you're invested in the game. It's not an entitlement program, and you have skin in the game. So when your car breaks down, you don't just leave it on the side of the road. All right, you're going to do something. And so that was probably, but I looked at also, Dress for Success, for instance, who was looking at getting clothing. So I was kind of looking at anyone that was doing something to keep people in the workforce and what they were doing to do those that were adjunct things that people needed to be successful in work to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So
brilliant. Thank you,
there weren't
ladies.
a lot of car programs. So I didn't have a lot of car programs to look at. That was the challenge. There were a few, and I looked at those, but I found and that's still a challenge. There's still such a lack of this type of program around the country.
Yes, blue ocean, if you will, for sure. All right. So we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and I want to make sure that we capture the questions from the audience. It looks like we have two from Camellia. One is for Christy, and then we have one for the entire group. So Rebecca's going to go ahead and post that first question. Camelia's asking, do you offer support only for children? What about older people who need hearing devices? What's your thoughts on that?
So I was just asked this question this morning by one of our possible providers. So when I first spoke it out in the air that I was going to start a nonprofit, it wasn't specific necessarily to children, especially with what my both of my cousins had gone through. So I had really thought initially that we would be helping young professionals. As we were continuing to do the research, and I realized just how many children were going without their hearing aids, and especially with the statistics that were found within that, we decided as a group that we can't help everybody immediately. Eventually we will, but where do we start? And so we felt that we would create the greater amount of impact with children for the rest of their lives than we would with adults. It would be impact for sure, but as adults, it would be, they would be impacted, but not as for a longer period of time. So, and those old poor people that you talk about, they absolutely need their hearing aids because their hearing aids are not paid for. Adult hearing aids are not paid for. Rarely by insurance is it covered. I took my mom not too long ago to get her new hearing aids, and they were not covered, and I couldn't cover them, and it killed me that we couldn't do that. It's going to be something in the future that we look at, but right now in our infancy, we are certainly focused on helping children. And another reason for that is because our referral base comes from the school audiologist. So that tends to steer us towards school-aged children. And because we need the providers, we can buy the hearing aids, but I can't put a hearing aid in the ear of a child. I can't assess them. I can't give ENT write-off. So because our providers are focused on children, then it just makes sense for us to help children. But there is a need there for senior citizens. There's a need for adults of all ages for sure. And another part of our mission is just to change legislation so that insurance companies are mandated to offer hearing aid coverage. And it's so sad that it's not done that way. And that will help all levels of people. And one more thing, I do want to answer your question about when you say old poor people. If those people are on Medicaid, they will get their hearing aids paid for. The working poor, however, and those that don't qualify for Medicaid, there's very little out there for them, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Christy. I really appreciate that. So it sounds like the children, the kiddos, as you say, are your bullseye right now. And you're proving the model. And then once you've proven that model, it's possible there could be some concentric circles in terms of additional populations that you may be able to reach out to. So thank you for that. We actually have a couple of questions. Another from Camellia. The next one is really for anyone. If she's asking, if I would like to open a nonprofit organization tomorrow, what are the concrete steps that I have to take? Who would like to take that one?
I'll jump in. It's not a complete answer. It was occurring to me as I was listening to my colleagues here. I think it helps to have some kind of a statement that you can convey your vision with to other people, because part of what you're going to be doing with that nonprofit is disseminating information, teaching people about the issue that you have and how important it would be for them and what to do about it. So when I started what I did, I used a quote from Plato. It is, what is honored in a country will be cultivated there. So we honored women to cultivate leadership. And I was very grateful for that centuries old wisdom. I heard Christy just resonating with the name that you found, Sounding Joy. It is a motivator for you. It energizes you as well. So in some ways, I think that you need to have something concrete to say and put up there for people to be inspired by, because this is based upon inspiration, all of it.
It's great advice. Yeah, love it. Christy, Susan, did you want to jump in on this one?
Well, I also think it's like a business, like you said, Martha. Really, you're starting a business, okay? And I think if you're going to start something, you need to have some type of plan, because as much as you have the passion, I wish when I had started this, if you asked me one thing that I wish I'd done differently, I wish I had done more on the operational side before I jumped into the passion side, because it would have made things so much easier in the long run. Making sure my books were set up long term, not just for the short term, but so that I didn't have to switch everything later, because I didn't know what I didn't know. Okay. So I didn't know what to ask. And so I wish I had done research and done all that rather than just jumping in and starting to try to get cars and do the cars. If I had it to do over, I would do that, because long term, it would have gotten me further ahead faster, because then I had to go backtrack and do all those things to make sure that we had those things in place. So that would be one of my suggestions. And somebody else has another question up that I'd like to, they asked me about taking a salary. And I think you have to realize, like any business, most businesses, you don't take a salary when you start. You're not able to do that. You got to put everything back in. And so you need to either have the wealth to do that or have a job that's going to allow you to be able to do that. I don't think you can count on the nonprofit being your job in terms of financially, because I think that's unrealistic, and it's going to put demands on the nonprofit that keep you from doing your mission, because you're always going to be chasing the dollar to pay that salary.
I think we all three have jobs that we do in addition to these nonprofits.
Actually, I don't. This is my job now.
That is your job.
But for 5 years, it wasn't when I started. Yeah, this is a 60-hour-a-week job.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a job the whole time, all the way through. And mine was, my secret was to compartmentalize. When I left my office and my work, I would be able to do other things, go home, 3 kids and a dog, and that whole story, but also to do work on this nonprofit. So, and I cut in front of Christy. So I'm sure that you've got some really concrete things to say in answer to this question.
Well, just like you were saying earlier, when I started my marketing company so many years ago, everybody else got paid before I did. So with the nonprofit side, even more so. So I'd never expected to take any kind of a salary. I do now take a small stipend because my time at the marketing agency has been reduced so much because this became bigger than I ever thought it would be at a much faster pace. So there's got to be some balance there within it, but it's certainly not anything to be able to live on. So the marketing agency is what feeds me enough to be able to take the time that I do with Sounding Joy. And the marketing agency will also in the future, one day, when I get to a point where I can sell it to a level that I can continue on my lifestyle and then dedicate 100% to Sounding Joy, and then also donate any speaking fees and that kind of thing to Sounding Joy. That's the ultimate goal that I have in regards to the marketing agency and Sounding Joy, is not having to take any kind of a salary, but to be able to quote unquote retire at a level where I don't need to take any kind of a stipend.
Well said. Wonderful. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour. This is amazing, amazing wisdom that you have imparted, and we thank you so very much. Just so folks on the call know, we are actually going to be creating a playbook based on Susan and Martha and Christy's inputs, and we'll be able to get that out to you next week. So stay tuned for that. But before we go, we have one last question. We're going to ask our esteemed panelists. It's a rapid fire roundup. So in one word or maybe one sentence, we'll just go around the horn and then we will conclude. The question is this: what is one skill you never expected you'd need, but you use it all the time as a nonprofit leader? Susan, how about you?
Starting with me. Okay. Well, for me, I was technology challenged. And I realized how important technology is to really do this efficiently. So that's probably my one piece.
That's your word of advice, technology. All right, Martha, how about you?
Especially the way
I was
things are
terrified
expanding.
of public speaking. And so I needed to make friends with that whole thing. And I learned how to tell stories. That was the most effective way to get my message across.
All right, technology, public speaking, storytelling. Christy, what is your one skill you never expected you'd need, but you use it all the time?
I never thought I would need a medical background for all of this, and to understand how insurance works, and more importantly, how insurance does not work for the people of this planet. So wish I didn't have to know that information, but it's something that I'm learning more and more about every day. And hopefully I'll learn enough to be able to make major change, at least in this country, for items like hearing aids to be more accessible to the people who need them most.
Wow, who knew? Just learning all that about the medical, the clinical side. How interesting. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen who are on the call today, thank you, audience, for being here. And thank you, panelists. Susan Jacobs from Wheels of Success, Martha Mayhood Mertz from Athena International, and Christy Vogel from Sounding Joy Hearing Aid Giving. So delighted to have you here. And we'll get the playbook ready to go, and it'll be available next week. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you, Mary.